Quick disclaimer, all the content in this video are for its rightful owner. No copyright infringement intended. I don't own shit. But yeah, enjoy the video.
White puts it down. The kick is on the way, and they get to it. And the Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. They win it 41-40.
Are you ready, Legion of Doom? Here come the Buffalo Sabres!
When you think Buffalo, you think 7-9, sub 500, 8-8, fringes of playoff contention, and maybe once in a while, the anomaly of 9-7. The Bills and Sabres have been mediocrity defined over the past 10 years, maybe longer. The only thing more abysmal in that city, and you'd be talking about the weather. If you truly look into it, the histories of both these franchises intertwine. Like stars crossing across the cosmos, the Bills and Sabres are joined at the hip. Their legacies of failure and misery, for one, are a common ground. Nothing too serious at first, a wide right here, a skate in the crease there, being the walking punchline of the NFL throughout the 70s to mid-80s, a hockey team that could never get over the hump in the 1970s and late 90s, losing in 4 straight Super Bowls, getting smacked around by teams like the Hurricanes, Senators, and Capitals in the semifinals, add in a Taro Tsujimoto, and then top it all off with a Music City Miracle. We are talking about a hockey team that hasn't won a playoff series in 10 years, the second time this has happened for them, and a football team that hasn't even made the playoffs in this millennium. They haven't won a playoff game in over 20 years. The word pain is an understatement here. However, these two snake-bitten teams now have one more common formality. Their owner, Terry Pegula, the adopted son of Buffalo, a successful fracking businessman who struck it rich with the natural gas boom around the turn of the last decade. When he gathered investors to help him buy a Sabres team on the verge of moving, it was a sudden glimmer of hope. Here was this team's savior, a man who is going to bring championships to the city of Buffalo for the first time since the 1960s. At the time, the Sabres were a team on the downturn. Their stars of the past decade were on the wrong side of 30, and there wasn't much in the pipeline to help them out. Thus, he leans on longtime GM Darcy Regier to guide him to this goal. Regier knew that Pegula wanted to make Buffalo proud. You know who won't make the city proud? Lindy Ruff. Get axed for the future in Ron Ralston. Unfortunately, they completely fall apart and Ralston is fired after less than 2 seasons. No big deal, we have a bigger name in Ted Nolan to help us rebuild. Massive fire sales ensued. Players like Ryan Miller, Thomas Vanek, and Jason Pominville, they are not the future. Look at all of these free agents that will help us. Veli Leno, winner of Worst Corsi for 2014. Andre Benoit. Matt Molson, whose legs disintegrated into a pile of ash. Cody Franzen, with incredible pylon powers. Andre Mazzaros, a defenseman who will be catapulted to Europe by the end of the year. And best of all, the veteran leadership of Brian Giunta. Most of these free agent signings completely fell to shit. It was to the point where new GM Tim Murray decided to simply tank for Connor McDavid. And then proceeded not to get Connor McDavid. For the Sabres, they get the consolation prize in Jack Eichel. Remember this name, it becomes important later on. Meanwhile, the Buffalo Bills are also having issues with ownership. The city's beloved Ralph Wilson has recently died and the family no longer wants any part of the team. Fears of moving are rearing their heads, but wait, here comes Super Pegula to save the day and buy the team. The Bills are going to remain in Buffalo, and better yet, they will win the championships like the Sabres are about to do. For now, though, both teams are at another crossroads. Ted Nolan, to the surprise of no one in hockey circles, has revealed himself to be a total cancer of a head coach. The Sabres are terrible. Doug Marrone decided to use an obscure option clause in his contract to get the hell out of Buffalo while he still could. The Bills are still walking mediocrity. For this, Pegula and his right-hand man Russ Brandon needed splash hires. They didn't really get head coaches more than they got names. Heading the Bills is the recently fired Rex Ryan, who had long since been revealed to be nothing more than a gigantic ball of hot air. For the Sabres, trying to throw shitloads of money at Mike Babcock to come had failed, so they settle for the bargain bin version in Dan Bylsma. As a Pens fan, all I'm going to say is this. We tried to warn you. We tried telling you this guy was stubborn and frustrating as all hell, but no, you didn't listen. You saw all of those wins and that shiny Jack Adams award and saw glory in your future. You even gave a third-round pick to the Pens for the rights to hire him. Turns out we weren't dire enough for both of these hires. Not content with being total mediocrity, both the Sabres and Bills have become absolute clown shows that nobody worth a damn wants to go near. Let's look at the Bills. Rex Ryan, learning absolutely nothing, uses the powers of wonderful nepotism to hire his brother Rob to oversee the defense. Rob couldn't be trusted to run a lemonade stand, let alone defensive schemes. After an incredibly embarrassing 0-2 start, heads roll. On the offense, the defense lets up over 500 yards to the Jets, yet the offensive coordinator is the one that gets fired. You can figure that one out. Even more disgusting is the way they completely toy with Tyrod Taylor. They give the guy an extension that somehow has a 1-year opt-out for the team. Then they simply bench him in the final game of the season. Not for performance issues, mind you, but because if he gets injured, it would trigger an insurance clause in the contract and cost the team millions of dollars. After the season, they allow the contract to lapse to avoid paying the injury clause, and completely lowball the guy to the point where he is one of, if not the lowest paid starting quarterback in the NFL. I mean, the guy isn't a world beater, but he didn't deserve that. Now watch the same damn thing happen to him next year. What you are also hearing is every player worth a damn demanding their agents not speak to Buffalo. In the least surprising turn of events, the Ryan hire doesn't pan out and the brothers are executed via firing squad before the end of the season. This is where things reach an alien dimension. Let's take a look at Bills GM Doug Whaley, which some consider to be one of the worst in football. Here's how he responded to the firing.
After that, I was informed that Rex would no longer be our coach. I wasn't privy to the conversation, so I cannot get into those details.
Wait, what? You don't even know your own head coach got fired? That's one of your major responsibilities as GM. What the fuck do you even do? Are you just a puppet for Russ Brandon, the Pagulas, or both? Like, how is this even possible? A guy who beat Doug Marrone in a power struggle a few years ago has suddenly lost the ability to even take a piss without getting ownership approval. The Bills made another hire shortly thereafter in Sean McDermott, a first-time head coach who was given total control over team operations, effectively putting Whaley on a melting sheet of ice. McDermott made all of the drafting decisions, and then the Bills promptly axed the GM and entire scouting staff the day after the draft. The rest of the league responds with a combination of laughter and pity. Even zanier are the Sabres. Dealing with a revolving door on defense and absolutely no depth whatsoever, the team is in the league's basement for the majority of the season. The team is not only bad, but really uninspiring and boring to watch. The only constants are the goalies standing on their heads and Evander Kane being a total cancer. But cracks from this bottom-dwelling facade show very, very quickly. Robin Lehner breaks fourth wall and goes on a massive rant about how terrible their situation is in February. His behavior becomes very unpredictable on the ice, and there are grumblings of discontent and chaos in the locker room. I mean, how could it be like this? Dan Bilesma was supposed to be a player's coach. This was a guy who devised the genius of Mustache Boy. It's obviously not because he's an egotistical asswipe who plays a very stubborn brand of hockey and heavily favors marginally skilled veteran grinders. It's what we tried to tell you. His record in Pittsburgh was buoyed by some of the best talent in the game. The Jack Adams Award is fucking useless. But to see this out of him? That was rather surprising, but they won't fire the guy after only 2 seasons. Sure, it seems like the Sabres may have been the mystery team to try and hire Claude Julien, but Pagula won't pay out the salaries of 3 head coaches. What's that you say? Our rising star Jack Eichel is complaining that he's about to demand out of Buffalo if things don't change? By the good Lord's graces, Pagula can't have that happen to their future. It's time for the Sabres to clean house. Bilesma and Tim Murray are fired in one fell swoop. Ironic how the consolation prize for trying to tank for McDavid was actually the guy that got the GM fired. Oh, how do we try and digest all of this information? Terry Pagula is kind of a weird figure in my mind. On one end, the man is the only reason why one or both of these teams are still in Buffalo to begin with. On the other spectrum, the man is absolutely inept as a sports owner. The man thinks big names are the key to success, and then is extremely quick to pull the firing trigger when situations get the slightest bit hairy. The man promised incredible riches of championships, but learned nothing from the Mikhail Prokhorov debacle with the Nets. He and his wife are the be-all and end-all for managerial decisions. Russ Brandon has almost no accountability as president. It's getting to the point where the man is having a faster trigger finger than Jimmy Haslam. Do you know how hard that is to do? Pegula is soon to be paying 5 head coaches and 4 general managers. He is fracking the dignity and the respect that the sports world had for these two franchises, one spike at a time. Buffalo is not only walking mediocrity in sports, they are now a walking punchline.
Privy to the conversation, so I cannot get into those details.
Miami is attempting to play spoiler in what could very well be Jay Cutler's final game. Buffalo took care of business easily as the Dolphins were hilariously undisciplined and came up short once again. Miami is back to reality as they were knocked out cold after a surprise playoff appearance. Now the Bills wait. Baltimore, what in the literal fuck is this? You're in a gimme situation where you win and you're in, and you've gone back to the politically correct offense you had earlier in the season. Nothing inspires confidence in a team like an elite quarterback going 4 for his first 17 passes. The Ravens are going to completely blow this game, aren't they? That's where you're wrong. The Bungles once again bungled and blew yet another lead with defensive collapses and offensive ineptitude. It's quite fitting, the team collapsing like this in what could well be Marvin Lewis's final game. Your assholes can be unclenched, Ravens. Playoffs are at hand. All you have to do is stop them on this final drive and you're what the fuck are you doing, Baltimore? Ravens, seriously, you can stop pretending to make this game competitive. Guys, what's going on? You've got the game won, just stop! Okay, they're down to their final play. Just stop them here and...
It's complete! Caught by Boyd! Tyler Boyd! Touchdown!
Holy fuck fucking Christ! You fucking blew it! You bungled this game so much that Marvin Lewis is cringing in disgust. Somewhere Art Modell's grave is being pissed on and Yinzers everywhere are jerking off to your failure. The Ravens were a shoo-in and they made Cincinnati's misery look like a bad day. This is where being in a division with Cleveland kills you. Baltimore has missed the playoffs via tiebreaker. Hey, Mr. Harbaugh, perhaps instead of whining about the game time, you could prepare your team to hold a fucking lead. Heads need to roll. The staff deserves the Gerard Gallant treatment. Throw their asses onto the street for this failure. It won't happen, though. Baltimore is too classy. Go fuck yourselves. Elite QB my black ass. So if Baltimore is out, that means... Oh my god, it happened. The Bills have made the playoffs. The walking mediocrity. We'll be playing postseason football for the first time in this millennium. We have witnessed history once again. Buffalo will have something to look forward to besides shitloads of snow and broken tables. This is a special day. Bengals, you have done something good in this world for once. This year. Hey, Buffalo, you made it back to the big dance for the first time in this millennium. Honestly, took you long enough. It really has nothing to do with the Bills themselves. They are still the walking mediocrity, but the NFL merely chose to grade on a curve this year. In fact, the Bills did their damnedest to sabotage their own efforts. They released and traded away key pieces to their defense. They fucked over Tyrod Taylor yet again. They thought it was a good idea to start a 5th-round selection at QB that immediately threw 5 picks in the first half. They lost 5 of 7 after a 5-2 start. This is a team that is merely being carried by LaShawn McCoy, and they still thank Chip Kelly for gift-wrapping him to Buffalo. Let's put it this way, the last Bills playoff game is almost old enough to purchase tobacco. The Music City Miracle was the last time they were here. In fact, I think Bills fans are still bitching that it was a forward pass. Hopefully it gets a little better this time. Speaking of which, let's take a look at how everyone else did. You wait almost 18 years to make it back to postseason football, and you do that. That was some incredibly ugly football to witness. It's more depressing because the defense did a decent job. The Jags were eagerly trying to hand you chances to win, but exorbitant offensive ineptitude was the name of the game. In fact, the O-coordinator lost his job as a result. For all of the feel-good stories and celebrating, this was a team that simply didn't belong here. Personally, I hope you can make it back sometime in the next 15 years. Wash out the misery of this loss. Forward to. We have reached a new frontier in this millennia indeed. It is a world where I no longer have to feel pity for the Bills organization. Sneaking into the playoffs whilst being strangled to death conjures such feelings. For now, Buffalo will be doing everything in their power to prove last year wasn't a fluke and shed the walking mediocrity label once and for all. In comes a QB battle with the new savior at QB in Josh Allen, the stopgap QB in AJ McCarron, and LaShawn McCoy to carry the offense once again. Oh my God, Christ. Good luck spinning the wheel of discipline, Shady. Let me speak a name. Tell me the first thing that comes to mind. Nathan Peterman. I firmly believe that you can come up with a few words. Legendary ineptitude, interceptions, terrible, why is this guy in the league? And I get it, Nathan Peterman's professional career has been completely laughable to this point. But this video is going to be a little more than just pointing and laughing at the guy. I want to do a bit more of a deep dive. Simple reason is that I have a bit more perspective on Peterman. I am a masochist, which is why I also double as a Pitt fan. Guess who I saw a lot of at Pitt? Nathan Peterman. His time with the Panthers started as a college transfer from the University of Tennessee. Peterman had just lost out on the starting job to Josh Dobbs, who ironically is now a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He didn't do all that much as a volunteer. Peterman played sparingly, throwing 20 for 43 and 94 yards, and giving up 2 interceptions in his first career start against Florida. And as it rains, it pours, he suffered a broken hand as well. Nathan needed a change of scenery. Pitt was a good fit in that regard. What you have to understand about Pitt at this time was that the program was in shambles. The team was mediocrity defined and could never reach that gear that would get them over the top. Even worse, the past half-decade and change was a dark time for the football team. The Panthers had suffered through embarrassment after embarrassment after embarrassment. And a quality quarterback, as rare as Pitt being relevant in the college football landscape. The program was all but starting from scratch again as Paul Chryst went back to his alma mater in Wisconsin. It was a match made in heaven. I know it may sound surprising considering his current reputation, but the dude was solid at Pitt. Watching him sky out passes to guys like Tyler Boyd, Quadri Henderson, and James Conner, among others, was a thing of beauty. His first year at Pitt showed promise. He eventually got the starting job and didn't look back. I look at a performance against a team like Louisville, where he flung the ball for 4 touchdowns in the second quarter that showcased his talents. For his first season at Pitt, he had an over 60% completion percentage, over 2,200 yards passing, 20 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. Those aren't bad numbers. There's at least a foundation that can be improved upon. His redshirt senior year at Pitt was a thing of beauty. When I think of him, I think about his performance against Penn State. On home soil, completing 70% of his passes for 3 touchdowns. I think about him against Clemson, the number 2 ranked team in the country, and torching them for over 300 yards passing and 5 touchdowns, leading them to one of their best victories in a decade. 60.5% completion rate, over 2,800 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, and only 7 picks on the year. There was talent there. Hell, with seasoning, I think there was a chance for it to convert at the NFL level. Fortunately for him, he would get that chance. He was selected in the 2017 NFL Draft by the Buffalo Bills in the 5th round. Not a surefire thing, but if he worked hard enough and showcased his talents at the next level, he could get a chance to lead like he did at Pitt. Little did we all know it would happen earlier than any of us anticipated. In what could be described as a power play maneuver by Buffalo, the incumbent starter Tyrod Taylor was being benched against the Los Angeles Chargers. Nathan Peterman was being thrown to the fire, chucked to the wolves, sink or swim. Every cliche in the book could be applied to this situation. The whole premise was baffling, but there was a part of me that was eager to see what he could do against an NFL defense. It was a total disaster.
Peterman rolling and throwing off the hands of DeMarco and intercepted. Patrick DeMarco couldn't hold it. Corey Toomer has it. And down the sideline, he tight ropes.
Let's cherry pick a positive. The guy can boast an almost 80% completion rate. if you count the 5 passes that were caught by the other team. Peterman was burned at the stake to try and screw over a quarterback, which ended up completely backfiring on them. It was such a miserable performance that Tyrod Taylor was put back into the game in the second half. To be fair, if you look at the passes in question, most of them weren't his fault. The pick 6 was on the fullback being unable to catch the ball. The second interception he tried to force, but his offensive line did him no favors. Number 3 was because his line couldn't block a damn thing. 4th turnover, that one was a bad read on the corner, that was his fault. 5th one, once again his fault, he overthrew his receiver by a country mile. By that point, whatever confidence he had was gone. This game, you could at least make the excuse that he was raw. He was in no way ready to take an NFL snap. He went into a few more games over the year, but it was once again in limited play. This includes the infamous snowstorm game against the Colts, where neither team could do much with the ball. He got injured and didn't finish the game. The offseason can allow him to get more acclimated to the scene. It was a 3-way battle for the starting QB position since Taylor was gone, but Josh Allen was even more raw than Peterman, and A.J. McCarron was traded to the Raiders at the 11th hour. Nathan Peterman would be starting for the Bills again. We can forget about the embarrassment of his first start. It goes even worse for him.
Comes the blitz. He's got time though. A wobbly throw is intercepted on the play.
There were no silver linings here. Peterman, just like the rest of the team, were a joke. Even with receivers dropping passes left and right, Nate didn't do himself any favors. The offense couldn't get anything going, and he threw some awful passes that were easy pickings for the Ravens D, one nearly going for another pick 6. His performance was perfection, a quarterback rating of 0. Once again, things were so bad that Peterman was benched for the hot prospect in Josh Allen. This would continue for the next few weeks, until another chance emerges. Josh Allen suffered an elbow injury in the second half against the Texans. Nathan Peterman would be thrust into action once again. In fact, he would show flashes of his ability a bit. He threw a touchdown. This is the situation that can revive a dying career. The Pitt fan in me was excited for him.
Peterman picked off Joseph, and he will go!
He accurately depicted the Pitt football team, shooting themselves in the foot repeatedly by their own doing. It was another awful read that the cornerback read like a book. Peterman was all but finished. At this point, I had to come to a realization. The quarterback that I saw put up solid performances in college, the quarterback that was the best I ever saw play for Pitt, became a meme. There's a reason why I call him Peter Meme now. He's every negative stereotype about a quarterback, regardless if it's his fault or not. He was so toxic to the Bills' offense that he was leapfrogged on the depth chart by Derek Anderson, a guy that hadn't started regularly in almost a decade and was brought in to be a mentor to the young guys. Several weeks later, he got passed by another journeyman that was signed a week earlier in Matt Barkley. They'd rather play those options than Peterman. Even if he gets another chance, he's given to fail, just like he did against the Bears. 3 more interceptions at home, one going for another pick 6 because his receivers couldn't catch a damn thing. When E.J. Manuel is throwing shade at you, there's a serious goddamn problem. At this point in time, Nathan Peterman has thrown 12 interceptions in about 100 passing attempts. He's thrown as many touchdowns to the other team as he has his own. His career quarterback rating is lower than if he just spiked the ball every play. This rate of ineptitude is unprecedented at the professional level. As a guy who saw him in college, this really stings. To say that I am really disappointed is an understatement. This guy I thought had a chance to make it. The only thing he's making are quality chances for the other team. His total failure in Buffalo, for reasons in and out of his control, resulted in him being cut from the team in favor of 2 journeymen. Maybe it's a situation like a Tennessee, where he needs a change of scenery for him to thrive, but this isn't the ACC. The NFL will eat mistakes that he makes alive. There's a part of me that feels like he's trying to force things instead of letting the game come to him, which is a fatal error a lot of young quarterbacks make. For him to make it, he will have to adjust, and quickly. I want to believe in him because, again, I want Pitt alums to succeed at the next level, but it's all but a lost cause now. At least I can pretend they're relevant again. Hail to Pitt?